Welcome to episode 218 of Come On You Reds, the Toronto FC podcast. Gareth Wheeler and Terry Dunfield with you for another week of TFC Talk. Coming up on this week's episode, Toronto FC bow out of the Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League. A familiar face is going away for now. We'll explain. And Toronto FC now turn their focus solely on Major League Soccer action, starting with a matchup against Chris Armas's former side in the New York Red Bulls this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Terry, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. A little bit knackered after a late night last night and things maybe not going to what would have been a difficult plan, but I'm hanging in there.
It was a late night, and we mentioned it a week ago. I think it's different for the team on the ground in Mexico City, but from now on, I think that Toronto FC, we need to flex our muscles and make sure that, you know what, Atlanta, Philly, maybe you can be the late game. I do like how the Champions League has staggered the games so fans can watch each and every one, Terry. That's a step in the right direction. We just got to talk to some people. Maybe you can flex your muscles. You're a mover and shaker.
I used to hate, though, that day in a hotel, the day of the game. It's a long day waiting for maybe a 7:30 or 8 o'clock kickoff, but that must be tough for the guys waiting till 10. You're thinking about the game, your role. I'd imagine the team meetings earlier in the day. That's a lot of time to kill.
No kidding. If you missed it last night, you could have watched it on One Soccer, but Toronto FC fell to Cruz Azul in the second leg of this quarterfinal Champions League tie. It was 1-0 on the night. A wonder strike by Brian Angulo, 3 goals in 2 games against Toronto FC. Add him to the list of players who, for whatever reason, seemed to haunt Toronto FC, but Angulo got the goal. And after about 25 minutes of very hard work, Toronto FC kind of fell to the wayside a little bit after that with the 4-1 aggregate deficit. Before we go any further, we're going to present our good, bad, and the ugly from last night's game from Toronto FC in the CONCACAF Champions League. I think it's apropos to play what head coach Chris Armas had to say about the adversity that his team has faced and what he thinks about his team moving forward.
Look, the first thing I'm going to say before I talk about the game is, this team, this Toronto FC team, who I've now met 4 months ago, this is an impressive group. And we have talked about the no excuses. And there's a lot of factors that have affected this group, which would have made it easy to quit in some of these games, to just start blaming and start, again, making excuses. And, I'm gonna say a few things that these guys have been dealt a difficult hand. No home field, away from their families, a tough stretch back in Canada. Our DPs are not healthy at the moment. So many little things. A really difficult draw in the Champions League. Hot days for games midday. Short rest. And these guys, not once do they make one excuse. But it's important to be said that this team sticks together. They came here tonight with full belief. They put, Cruz Azul, who's really, a good team in a difficult game in the first half. And yeah, that's what I'll say about the game, that we showed up tonight with a belief and a plan. And for folks at home, 115 long balls they play. They're very effective in what they do. It just is really challenging. And, the last thing I'd say is I'm really proud of the team, that they don't quit, they stick together, and that they went for it tonight.
A passionate response to the initial question. It was asked by Neil Davidson of the Canadian Press in defense of his team. What's your reaction when you hear that, Terry?
That there's more to it maybe than what we saw on the field last night. And I think that there's context that has to be taken into consideration. And prior to going into that game, the mindset of the group is we're not going to make excuses. We're going to get after it. We're not going to think about the New York Red Bull game coming up. And even with 3 goals to claw back, we're going to get after it. And that's exactly what we saw in the first half. Unfortunately, TFC weren't able to nick a goal and ran themselves into the ground a little bit. And I just think the last 4 months is what we saw in the second half. And when it gets hard, there's adversity. It's an opportunity as a team to really grow, build some resilience, and come together. And I think with Chris Armas at the helm, that's the message he was trying to get across.
I got a couple things I want to add. I want to distinguish between no excuses and there being lots of reasons why Toronto FC fell in this tie. Because I love the attitude of Armas and Michael Bradley and the players in the team, according to the head coach, that there are no excuses. But I love how he pointed out as well, there are legitimate reasons. There's been legitimate reasons why there's been setbacks here in the early stages of the season and the preparation to it. TFC have now played 7 games in 7 different stadiums. They're still a team without a home, a COVID outbreak, playing without all 3 designated players last night, just reintroducing players into the group. Mavinga, Azorio, clearly not at full stride. A roster that's continuing to turn over. A new coaching staff, a new way of playing, new methodology. Need I continue? Because I can continue on. He mentioned playing Wednesday night against Leon and then Saturday afternoon against the Montreal Impact in Miami. It doesn't get much more difficult than that. They might come across as being excuses, but Terry, these are legitimate reasons, legitimate obstacles that have stood in Toronto FC's way.
Yeah, I think so. And I think against Club Leon, I guess all those ingredients were highlighted in the second half. And, at times it was tough to watch. And it looked as though, maybe the analogy I'd use is the players in their legs and altitude. When you run a 400 meters and your legs are filled up, you're gassed, and you're now with that feeling, it's pig in the middle. You're playing and you need to get that ball back really quick because time's running out and you need to score 3 goals. And whenever TFC stepped, Club Leon just played over top of that midfield wall and they're a little bit exposed at the back, and I thought the back line dealt with it. And it just led to a tough situation. And unfortunately, hopefully we're okay. Mavinga got out in 45 minutes. Hopefully Osorio's all right. It was great to see Ayo back out there. But yeah, it was just a little bit too much to ask for the group at this stage of the season with everything that's happened ahead of it.
Yeah. Just lastly on the excuses part, excuses to me, Terry, are the referee didn't give us that call, or our defender got the sun in his eyes as he was looking up for the ball in a set piece. That sort of nonsense. Or this player was suspended for us. Those are excuses. But some of the actual adversity that Toronto FC have faced, I think there's good reason for it. And I think that it was smart of Armas to come out after the game. I think that anyone watching would have saw the second half, a team that was absolutely running on fumes and unable to take the game to Cruz Azul in the end. But I like how he kind of put his arm around the group and said, I'm really proud of them, defended them, is trying to big them up a little bit ahead of some very big league games that are coming up in the next few weeks. As a coach, I think you can go either way. You can either kick and scream and yell. You can maybe even take the middle ground where, you can, kill them with kindness, but provide a little bit of honesty as well. And I think that this was an opportunity where the head coach is just putting his arm around his team a little bit, said, hey guys, I'm with you. We're in this together. Let's dig ourselves out.
Yeah. And at this stage, I think, trust and believing in the vision of Chris Armas and team spirit is so important. And I think after the press conference and what they're doing today, the technical staff and front office are going, okay, how do we solve these problems? What do the next 5 games look like? Okay, here's the position we're in. Let's fix it.
We can discuss last night's or Wednesday or Tuesday night's game, against Cruz Azul, or you can take an approach of the 4 Champions League games against very good Mexican opponents in Club Leon and Cruz Azul as a whole. I'll start, if you don't mind, Terry, with the good from what I saw in Tuesday night's game. I was very impressed with the start that Toronto FC showed, punching out of the gate. We can document 3 or 4 really good goal scoring chances that Toronto FC had. Nick De Leon with a good piece of footwork inside the area, playing it to Zorio on the far post. His header cleared off the line in the 7th minute. De Leon played in, the defender was on the ground in Aguiar, and De Leon put the ball in the back of the net, was just fractionally offside. Ayo Akinola was played through, great ball played through to him, hit the ball. Maybe if he's, a little bit more in stride, a little bit in form, having played more than 30 minutes on the season, maybe that ball ends up in the back of the net. But I really like the start of Toronto FC. And on top of that, I really like the way that Ayo Akinola led the line for Toronto FC last night. I think we saw glimpses of the player that he was last season, had that little burst of speed to get in behind the back line. And I thought he did a nice job holding up the ball, linking up play as well. So those were my positives from the 1-0 loss on Tuesday. Do you want to build off of that, or do you have anything to add to that good list?
No, I'd agree with it. And I just think where we're at physically, just individually and probably collectively, we just missed that little bit of sharpness. And I think with that little bit of sharpness and a really good preseason, and we're firing on all cylinders, I think that leads to goals. And I can definitely see growth in just a week or 8 days from the last game against Cruz Azul in possession. I think we've grown. I thought it was better, in particular in the first half than the previous game.
Right. I think stylistically, Cruz Azul, we documented on the broadcast, they have about 3 defenders who have played well over 1,000 games for the club. I mean, these players have been there for a long time. They controlled the game, and the style of play made it difficult, where they almost took the sting out of the game. Like Armis and Toronto FC want to play, high tempo, pick things up, force teams into mistakes at times. And you said it on the broadcast last night against Leon, who wanted to play out of the back. It kind of suited Toronto FC. What they faced against Cruz Azul over these 2 legs, a completely different style of play. And when you concede first in those 2 games, you're really playing into their hands, aren't you?
Yeah, you now become a little bit, I'd say, where we haven't spent a lot of time is in our attacking organization, in possession. I think Chris Armis only's had so much time, and he's really focused on TFC's press. And as you said, that was fantastic against Club Leon. TFC only had 30% of the ball. When they won it, they were vertical, created opportunities, and it was perfect against Cruz Azul, because you can see a tough first goal 3 minutes in. They do really well in the first leg to get back in it, score an open play. Osorio scores, and then it's 2 set pieces. And now Cruz Azul are happy to say, you go have the ball, try to break this down. We're missing 4 or 5 of our senior players, some of our real weapons, and we haven't spent a whole bunch of time here. And we lacked a couple of ideas in the first leg. And I think fast forward a week, we improved here, and against a very good team defensively, we opened them up, especially right down the middle of the pitch. So I take positives from that for sure. And I see a team growing in that area. I'd say our set pieces, I'd add to that. That was better. I'm okay with a couple headers from distance on corner kicks. I think the structural changes helped. I didn't feel like those were a problem last night. So there were some real positives. Where I'm worried, and maybe that takes us in.
Let me add one more thing to the good. I love how Prezo and Akello, 2 young Canadian players, came on and got that experience playing in Estadio Azteca. I mean, even without fans, it's special to play in a footballing cathedral like that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that young players are continuing to get a chance to expand, to learn, to grow, and have those important experiences, Terry.
Yeah, for sure. Good point. I think it's easy coming on with 10 minutes to go and you don't have a whole bunch to lose against a team that's now sitting off you. But yeah, huge experience.
It's that same thing for Schaffelberg. Put him in that group as well. we'll get into some of the decisions to be made within the team and the squad a little bit later on in the podcast. My bad from last night, and I think bad is a little bit of a harsh way of putting it, but something that was frustrating from our perspective, watching from afar, was Toronto FC's fullbacks are usually such a threat with Larea, Morrow, Auro moving forward, getting involved in attacks, and they simply were unable to get forward and provide that influence in the game last night. Richie Larea, I think, only had 1 or 2 touches in and around the opposition's 18, and I think it had less to do with what Toronto FC was doing and more about the style of play and the system that Cruz Azul was playing. They had Rivero and they had Alvarado. Their wing players dropped so deep, Terry, that the fullbacks didn't know whether to push high or to defend deep. And defending deep was almost what they had to do by default because of all the long balls that were being played over the top. So they were kind of caught between 2 spaces. And this is where we're going to have to see a little bit of an evolution of the way that the team plays. And Chris Armas has told us that he wants to dominate the middle of the park, play more narrow. But in a big, expansive field like that, when a team is using so much width and playing wide and dragging some of your players into positions where Toronto FC don't want to be, I think there's going to have to be a little bit of adjustment against teams that want to play that way. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but the fullbacks are so important for this Toronto FC team. And I think there might need to be an adjustment. Maybe you need to go 3 at the back and push those fullbacks forward. Maybe you need to try something a little bit different when teams are set up against you like that.
Yeah, good point. I think you're asking a lot from your fullbacks physically in this system to get forward. And I just think where the guys are at physically, they're not there yet. And you can, and we spoke about it where we haven't really had a preseason. Guys have picked up some knocks or are coming back from knocks, and then you're now playing in altitude, man. Making those high intensity bursting runs up the side of the field, it's really tough.
Right.
So I'd mitigate it with that a little bit, and then I'd say too with our style of play right now, it's very quick. It's just really high tempo when we do win it. It's into DeLeon, it's into Sorio, and then they're looking to play forward. It's into Michael, and he's looking to find maybe Schaffelberg slashing through. And I thought their fullbacks made the pitch. They tucked in by the center back, and there wasn't a whole bunch of space. But if it's that quick, it's really difficult for Morrow and Richie Larea to get there. And by the time they get there, the play's already gone, and they're now having to come back. So I think just kind of tweaking with the tempo of our attacks will help include our fullbacks. And we saw when it does work, Auro laid on, getting to the byline, clipping it to the back post where Noble Kello almost scores. I think that's an example of what Chris Armas wants.
Would you put the goal conceded in the bad category? That is a conversation amongst Toronto FC supporters. Angulu's goal in the 28th minute came from 35 yards out. Hit sweet as a peach on the volley, caught Alex Bono a little bit off his line. I think that I put that in the category of a really good goal scored, a well-taken goal by a talented young player in Brian Angulo, more than, a negative in terms of the way that it's conceded. Chris Armas said post-match, even though Justin Morrow got his head on the ball and the long ball that was played forward, he's like, you're not going to win every one of those balls. I think it's imperative that Toronto FC win that second ball, win that knockdown, rather than something that came about because of a goalkeeping error. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think Angulo just had too much time and space. I think that's your critical thinking piece where you pull it back. I think that's where maybe we could have had a little bit more pressure on him. And I'd say 98% of people, 99% of people say, yeah, no, it's a wonder strike, and it really is. But I from what I've seen with Alex, and I know him, I think I saw it on his face coming in at halftime. He's shaking it. That, yeah, I'd like that one back. And here's why I'll say I think he knows his scouting report on Angulo. He scored a wonder goal in the first leg, so he knows he's got that in the locker. I think his profile is 6'3". Like if any keeper in the league shouldn't be beat from that distance over top of him, it's him. And he has the athleticism to get there. I thought what's difficult is TFC were so stretched and there's space everywhere. And because we're stretched and they're so direct, part of your role as a goalkeeper is to protect that space in behind, and did a really good job of that. And that's maybe why he's a little bit high. The action before the long kick from them came from him going long, so he's a little bit high as well. But what I would say is, taking in all those cues, knowing Angulo, I just think if he gets a little bit more of a jump on it, he can save it. And as you said in the broadcast, he does get a fingertip on it.
Man.
So I just want to say, I mean that as a compliment to Alex, and know the quality of the keeper he is.
Of course, it almost skimmed off his fingertips as well. He was close to it. I've seen much worse. He hit that ball. He couldn't hit it any better in terms of placement and power, and it was on that strike.
Too. The trajectory of it, it wasn't like a looping one that we saw Ibra score in MLS with the Galaxy. It was a different kind of strike.
Just want to say about Cruz Azul, look, there's more than one way to play and be effective in the game of football, because the way that they play are very 1990s. Isn't it? No nonsense center backs, defenders that can defend, a team that uses the width, aren't afraid to play direct, partnerships in attack. It's not the ticky-tacky style of football. It's not intricate patterns. And quite frankly, it can be effective, and they're very good at it. And they got the job done against Toronto FC. So Toronto FC out after the quarterfinal stage of the CONCACAF Champions League. Still a feather in their cap, winning that tie to start the season, again, without 3 DPs against Club Leon in the second leg. One of the biggest wins in recent memory for this club. So well done in the competition, but they met their match, and the circumstances were just far too much for Toronto FC to overcome. The club continues to move and shake as the squad continues to, get healthier, hopefully, and starts to come together. But that also means that players need to go out as well. It was announced this week that central midfielder, Canadian international Liam Fraser has gone on loan for the season with the Columbus Crew. Liam's 23 years of age. Terry, if he's not going to play here, he needs to play football at this stage of his career. And perhaps there's more of an opportunity to play right now with the Crew rather than Toronto FC. If you look at that defensive midfield, that position that he plays, maybe that holding role isn't something that's prominent, used all that often in the way that Chris Armas has this team structured to play. And when you look at Bradley, Delgado, Prizo, Akello, Azorio can play that role. De Leon, there's simply a number crunch for a limited number of positions. Your thought on the loan and what this might do for Liam to kind of maybe re-kickstart his career, because undoubtedly, and we saw it, Canada against the United States, 2-0. Also games for this club as well. What an effective player he can be.
Yeah. I'm trying to put myself in Liam's head and kind of go back, since he's kind of made his debut in the first team and played for Canada. And if I'm Liam, I'm probably just a touch frustrated. And I say that because maybe I haven't gotten the minutes that I feel I deserve. And sometimes, players are going to think about themselves. And when I have gotten minutes, I maybe haven't had the A team around me. And I don't think it's any disrespect on him. I actually think it's quite respectful that TFC have kept him here for so long and haven't loaned him, because they feel that there's value of having Liam as cover at TFC. And I just think he's quite similar to Michael Bradley, and that hasn't that's been a difficult barrier for him to overcome. Greg Vanny wasn't, I'm saying stuff that we all know, wasn't a huge fan of playing those two together. He then has that incredible game for Canada where he comes off the bench after 5 or 10 minutes. Canada beat the US, and he was outstanding. Then Greg leaves, Chris Armas comes in. And if I'm Liam, I'm thinking, man, maybe this style of play isn't a perfect fit for me. Maybe it fits a Ralph Prizo a little bit more. I think Chris Armas wants to see Michael a little bit higher, and seeing Liam really pressing, locking in, covering a ton of ground in a 2, maybe doesn't suit his individual game. And I don't mean any disrespect by that. Columbus Crew, Aidan Morris gets injured. There's an opportunity to bring midfielder in. It's down the road from TFC. There's a link there with Bezbachenko. And I think Caleb Porter's style of play is going to see him playing a similar role to what he did the role he played when he came on for Canada, where he sits in front of the back four, helps Columbus Crew progress out of the back, from back to front, which he's very good at. He'll be that player that gets the ball in to their number 10 and their
Zelarayan, yes.
And that'll be his role. He's almost your setup player. He's really good with that first pass in transition. So I think it's a perfect fit for him. I think he'll probably go there, and he shouldn't. He'll go there with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And I think that's just more to his personality, that, he's a winner and he's been waiting for this opportunity. And I think it's a good fit for everyone.
I like the guy. I like the player, more importantly, but only 46 minutes this season. He picked up an injury ahead of the under-23 tournament. Honestly, Terry, I feel like that was a big loss for both the country and the player. The opportunity to play games at a high level, representing Canada at Olympic qualification, I think it would have done him all the good in the world.
I'd say he's probably in the men's pool. Again, I don't know, but I'd say, I think he's held.
Under 23 was perfect for him, though, for this tournament. And the central midfield positions for the men's national team, they're congested right now. Eustachio comes in, Mark-Anthony Kaye, Atiba's back in the mix, Sammy Piette, who's playing every week for Montreal. It's a competitive place to be, right? I just thought that under 23 tournament would have been great for him at this stage.
If I'm the coach, Wheels, and this is why I love soccer so much. We can all have our opinions, but Canada's best ever game ever was, or at least in the top three, was that game against the U.S. and he played a pivotal role. And
yep.
I'm John Hurtman. I don't forget about that.
Right. I'm totally with you, but in all important World Cup qualifying games, it's stacked and you need players that are playing. That's my whole point. Under 23 would have been the perfect stepping stone for, Gold Cup this summer, or if he's involved in World Cup qualifiers. But lastly on this, Liam has only played just under 1,900 minutes since he's been with Toronto FC in all competitions. He needs to play more. And honestly, this move, I think, has as much to do with the club having faith in Ralph Priso playing that position, playing a much bigger role as an 18-year-old prospect who's turning heads, than it is an indictment on Liam Fraser. Sometimes that other young player comes through and a coach, based upon the way that he plays, the style, the trust, will just feel more comfortable playing with that player. And another 18-year-old Canadian getting a real good look in this team, I think it's a good problem to have for Toronto FC. We don't speculate just about any rumor on this podcast. That's not our job. We're not going to churn the rumor mill, but reliable sources have said that Toronto FC are close to potentially signing another center back, Kamar Lawrence, a player that formerly played for the New York Red Bulls, 146 games for the Red Bulls, ended up playing 17 games for Anderlecht. His move to Europe came at altogether the wrong time, with the pandemic really hitting right when he made that move. But a player that has 60 caps for Jamaica, anything can happen. Deals can break down at any time, but based upon who and how this is being reported, we're comfortable talking about it on this podcast. I think that addressing the fullback position was a must for this group, Terry, just with Larea and Arrow and not much more at that position. Justin Morrow as well. You at least need 4 top-level fullbacks to play on a weekly basis. And I think that Toronto FC goes from strength to strength, adding a player that's been very much one of the best at that position in MLS over the course of his career.
Yeah, and that's where when I think of Lawrence, I think of him playing for the Red Bulls, and there's a relationship there already with Chris Armas and Ali Curtis from his time there, so they know the player well, which is great. When I think of him as a player, I just think he's reliable. You know exactly what you're going to get from him, which is a fantastic attribute. I think he's a good fit for this system. I think he'll help drive the system and help the others understand it and the real nuances of it. He's a great age. For whatever reason, it didn't work out at Anderlecht, and I think the timing of the deal is good for everybody.
Yeah, the profile is spot on. We'll see if this deal is done and how that plays out. Keep a lock to Toronto FC, because it seems like there is a move or two moves to be had. Understanding that Toronto FC is limited cap space, Terry, limited roster flexibility at this time, but they have gone on this general allocation money shopping spree in order to bolster the squad. If it's not fullback, do you think there's another area that Toronto FC should or might be interested in taking a look at in terms of either bolstering the talent in the first team or maybe adding some depth?
I think once everybody comes back from injury, some of the knocks clear up, and the boys kind of find their rhythm and flow and really, get into a groove. I think then you can answer that question. I still think, we're missing and haven't seen enough of our guys consistently within the squad to make that decision. I still think we're maybe 5 or 6 games away from answering that question. And it's tricky when you keep seeing a different 11, and Chris Armas has been forced into that. I don't think, and I don't think anyone would argue with this, we haven't seen our best 11 that's fully fit. Yeah.
That's my sentiment as well. Armas addressed post-game last night that, the 3 DPs aren't fully healthy. It's unclear when we will see Soteldo make his debut. Clearly a difference maker when he will be made available. The MLS MVP hasn't played. We've barely seen Altidore, the other DP up top. We've seen 45 minutes of Mavinga. We've only seen Azorio for a cup of coffee, and he scored 2 goals. I think until we see what this team looks like when they come all together is difficult to say. But that fullback position, Terry, understanding the international commitments that players like Larea might have, I mean, that was a must for me, bringing in another fullback. After that, I think that they've liked what they've seen out of Luke Singh. And then if you have those 4 players at center back, potentially you can add or move around some parts to cover up that position. Akinola getting back to full fitness, his first start, kind of takes care of up top. I think that when this group is healthy, it looks to be a pretty well-rounded bunch.
From what you did, it's a competitive 11 to get into. And I'd say in this run of games we've already had, 1 or 2 have said, you know what, I can do a job when I'm called upon, but I still think you need your core 6 or 7 guys to be available and play the majority of the minutes.
Right. I know fans, and I understand your sentiment because we're a fan of football teams as well. You always want to see a big splash or a big signing or another player come in. I mean, if you had Soteldo and you add Lawrence, and then on top of that, you can't have it both ways. You can't ask for players to come in from elsewhere and then expect the young players to be brought through and given an opportunity as well. Because I think there's still a lot of intrigue around Shaquille Marshall-Ruddy and Jaden Nelson and Prizo and Akello. So there's got to be some sort of balance, and the cap will only allow you to do so much, right, Terry? So it's something that by virtue, I don't think that any of us have much of, and that's patience. My wife certainly has 0 patience at all, the most impatient person in the world. But I think that patience is going to have to be preached a little bit right now, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, we no one gave TFC a chance to beat Club Leon and the way that they did. And there's huge positives there. I thought TFC, after scoring early against Vancouver, were comfortable all game until giving up a tough goal. I thought the game against Montreal is just such a quick turnover. The guys are drained physically, and I think probably the staff knew that coming into it. And then Cruz Azul was probably just a step too far, having given up the goals that we did in the fashion that we did in the first leg.
So now, we'll see what moves are made. That's out of obviously the team's control, but what they are in control of now is turning their sole focus into Major League Soccer action. A busy few weeks coming up for TFC, starting this Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Armas goes back to the place he was head coach just a season ago in taking on the New York Red Bulls. Their manager is here now. He wasn't here at the end of the season, but it's Gerhard Struber, former manager manager of Barnsley, who are now in the league championship playoffs, trying to get promotion to the Premier League. He's taken over this side. He came away with his first victory last weekend in a 2-0 victory over Chicago. They're 1-1-2, 2 losses thus far on the season. What do you make of the Red Bulls? What do you make of the matchup this weekend?
It's a tasty one for Armis and Ali Curtis. And I know everyone's like, oh, it's sad to play my old club. That's fine. There's something to it for sure. And, it's going to mean a lot to them. And I think it'll be interesting. You're playing against a group that's been playing a particular way for a long time. And when you think of the New York Red Bulls, you know their brand. And we're probably, we're not a hybrid of Vanny and Armis and the New York way. I feel like we're a little bit closer to the New York Red Bulls. So it'll be interesting to see where we're actually at. I think it'll be a good barometer. I think Chris Armis will know that system inside out. And I think, too, the guys know the importance of these next 3-4 games to start picking up some points because it's tough to chase points in a hot summer.
Red Bulls are starting to bring in some intriguing players. There's the familiar names like Aaron Long at the back. Caceres is a Venezuelan player, another Venezuelan. He's scored a couple goals on the season, really good player. But they bring in Frankie Amaya from FC Cincinnati. They sign a new DP in 22-year-old Polish striker Patrick Klimala, formerly of Celtic. He hasn't played yet. There's no reports as of this recording whether he may be available or not this weekend against Toronto FC. Remember the young man who scored the worldie last year against TFC and Caden Clark. So it's a team in transformation. I think that this is a game that's winnable for Toronto FC. They can absolutely come away with something, and that's potentially what they need just to get things back on track, just in terms of the spirit, the belief in the team. Look, the Red Bulls are nowhere near as accomplished of a side as Toronto FC faced in their last 2 games against Cruz Azul.
Yeah, and you're, I think if I'm on that plane headed to New York, I'm happy to be going into the comforts of MLS. It'd be nice to play in an MLS stadium for the first time, and just kind of get back into that rhythm a little bit. I think you're coming up against a side that's lost 2-1-1. Like you said, they're not firing on all cylinders. I think it's a nice matchup, and then you've got Columbus coming up pretty quick on the Wednesday. So I'd imagine Chris will use most of his squad as well.
So what adjustments, if any, do you need to make for this game or the upcoming game as well against Columbus Crew? And after that, just to mention quickly, Terry, the games come fast and furious. New York FC the weekend after, then you got another, then you have Orlando and Columbus. This is a very difficult, busy month ahead for TFC.
Yeah, but good question. I think my first call is to the sports science team to see where the guys are at physically and how much guys have left in the tank, whether guys can go Saturday, Wednesday. And then from there, just looking at the team, I think Io will be sharper for last night. And you've got him probably for 60 minutes. It'll be interesting to see where Josie's at. I thought De Leon was a warrior last night and gave everything. He might be, it might be tough for him to go from the start. I thought he was good last night. Schaffelberg looked good, so I think you're okay there. I think you've got a question. It's an interesting one, and fair play to Ralph for even posing the question. Do you go with Ralph or do you go with Delgado beside Bradley in midfield? I don't see our captain coming out of the side. Osorio unfortunately picked up what looked like a thigh, having ice on that. That might lead to an opportunity for somebody on the right-hand side. Omar's been solid. I thought Mavinga looked good for 45 minutes. Hopefully Zavaletta's okay. And then I think you're kind of okay in the fullback roles. I don't know what you think. I'd probably continue with Alex.
I'm the one adjustment that I consider making for Toronto FC. I would consider pushing Richie Larea up and playing him in a more attacking role, at least over the short term, Terry, especially if Osorio can't go. We haven't got an update. It might be nothing. It might just be a player he did his 45 minutes and just taking care of his body, it might be nothing. But I look at this team right now. If Altidor's a doubt, I mean, apparently it's just illness with Altidore. We'll see his availability for the weekend. Hopefully he can play. But I'm looking for difference makers. I'm looking for players that can go and create something and bring some goals into the team. And I think maybe over the short term, Larea getting pushed forward, playing a little bit more actively in attack, and having Moro and Arrow play the fullback positions, it might be just a short-term option until players like Soteldo and Pozuelo and Nazorio are back and kicking. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, because maybe you're not playing to Larea's strength because he builds up steam for the back, and once he gets going forward, he's such a threat. But it might be an option, something to think about for Toronto FC, especially if you want to continue to press high. You have the legs of Larea to cause fits as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I like the thinking behind him, his profile in kind of that defensive shape to press out a little bit like Gallardo did when we turned over the goal against Club Leon. I think it allows you to get Auro and Richie Larea on the field together on the right-hand side where they're most comfortable. I think long-term, Chris Armas probably sees him as he's perfect for that right back slot that kind of bombs forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Armas' attacking organization. He wants players that are comfortable in the pocket in between lines that are very narrow. They're sort of right-sided midfielders. And that's maybe not Richie Larea, but maybe something we could look at.
All right. We'll see how it all plays out, what the team looks like on the field, and if Toronto FC can pick up a much-needed victory. It's going to be the 8th game in their 8th different stadium, Red Bull Arena, Saturday, 1 p.m. You can watch on TSN. Thanks for listening. This has been Come On You Reds on behalf of Terry Dunfield. We'll see you next week, Terry.
Sounds good, Wheels. Great stuff.
And on behalf of our producer, Erica, I am Gareth Wheeler, and this has been Come On You Reds.